You have to be really intentional about putting a team together. You have to be really intentional about putting a team together.
Crawled out of the pound and started screaming.
How good is Joey Bosa?
Herbert, rolling, looking, throwing, end zone, touchdown, intercepted. Derwin James. Derwin was there.
You got to be on a mission every day in the NFL. But even more than that, you got to be on a mission together.
Great hands, Keenan Allen.
The Los Angeles Chargers select Rashaan Slater.
Asante Samuel Jr. Stop. Oh, I'm stopping y'all boys. That's what I'm intercepted. Picked up by Michael Davis.
Explosion. Explosiveness from Eckler.
There's Murphy. Boy, he blew that up, didn't he?
It is picked off. Nasir Adderley.
50-50 ball is 100%. Mike Williams.
Ochena, Nwosu, and that will end it.
Time to bolt up.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by UFC Fit, Brewery X, Charger Bolt Family, and Manscaped. Make sure you use the promo code LAFB20. Go to manscaped.com. Get 20% off your next purchase. Go to manscaped.com for more details. If you are joining us live on our show now on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe, as Dan and I will be bringing you content throughout the entirety of the season on Chargers Unleashed on YouTube. Dan, second live show. First week of training camp is in the books. Lot to break down this afternoon, my friend.
Jake, we have made it. We are live from Southern California, talking all things Los Angeles Chargers training camp and recap on this day 7. Lots of stuff to get into. It's been a bit since we've actually been live, been a bit since we've had a show, so really looking forward to getting into this and going over some of the latest breaking news that have happened. And before we get into that, shout out to all of the folks already in the comments. For folks who want to participate, any questions, feel free to reach us on anywhere that we are currently going live. We're on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are also streaming live from YouTube. So all of the folks out there, don't hesitate to reach out, say hello. We're loving what you guys are bringing to us. So Jake, Chargers training camp just ended. Tomorrow's an off day. Then we get 3 straight days of pads. As a whole, how are you feeling about this Chargers team? I know there's been a lot of smoke last few days, a lot of topics being discussed. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I put this question out on Twitter last night as far as just saying, what's the biggest surprise now that we're a week into training camp? And a lot of the responses I was getting was obviously some comments from Josh Palmer's, how he's been looking thus far, Mark Webb. Probably the one that I agree with the most is that there's been no season-ending injuries thus far, which, you know, knock on wood, baby, that does not end up coming to fruition. But so far, so good. Derwyn James. God, I miss Derwyn James. I miss that man.
Yeah.
There's so many things to get into just as far as a whole, because really there's nothing more to sum up other than the practices have looked great. This rookie class thus far, a majority of it has looked pretty damn good. And we got a lot to break down on this, because position by position, the training camp battles that we thought were going to be pretty intriguing, especially from the wide receiver standpoint. There are a couple surprises in there that even when we were talking about the expectations prior to training camp kicking off, a few surprises that maybe we didn't expect that were coming out of there. Lots of battles in the secondary. Again, certain players stepping up that maybe we didn't expect to this fast. So, I mean, where to start, honestly.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see, and I feel like I say it's going to be interesting probably every 3 seconds, so you can put that one in the tip jar as well. But it's going to be fun to see these guys in pads more and more often, and you're already starting to see a lot of the players starting kind of getting heated up, going against each other. You're seeing the Keenan Allen, Derwin James matchups going up. You're going to Keenan Allen, Chris Harris Jr. You're seeing Asante Samuel Jr. step up. Coach Staley talked today about all of the rookies really showing up today and giving the reason why we actually picked them. Josh Palmer, Mike Williams bringing some interesting topics. We've got all kinds of stuff. But I think we have to start with the number 13 overall pick this year in Rashaan Slater and how good this guy has looked early on. I mean, Jake, everybody talked about the offensive line wasn't necessarily looking as good as we thought before pads came on, but everybody said, wait for the pads. When those pads came on, Rashaan Slater was undefeated.
In so many words, yes. It was cool to see that sequence of the pass rushers that he ended up going up against in camp and how the tweets came out, because it was Uchenna Nwosu, Slater gets the win. And then the big one that everybody was waiting for, and I love how Fernando put this in his article from Sports Illustrated. It was like Clegane Bowl from Game of Thrones. It was Rashaan Slater against Joey Bosa, and Rashaan Slater won emphatically. Emphatically, he won. So just to see that progressions of him, and then you see these stories of his comments on how he approaches the game mentally, about wanting to get better, talking about what he did on vacation on just trying to better his game, even while he was away from the team. These are just some of the things that just goes to show you how mentally tough he is, especially from playing the offensive lineman standpoint. You need that, but not just from the physical standpoints, but to see this type of mindset and this output thus far. Yes, I know it's only been a week into training camp so far, but to see this type of output from him, both just mentally what he has said and then physically what he's bringing on the field in practice, it's got to make you feel good about the Chargers selecting him when they did.
Shout out Cincinnati Bengals for going and getting Jamar Chase. And Jake, sidebar, some of the stuff coming out of Bengals camp, like, do you think that they're questioning if they should have gotten Penei Sewell now over Jamar Chase?
I feel for Joe Burrow. I'm a Joe Burrow fan. I really like Joe Burrow. We said this leading up to the draft, that if the Bengals were to go any position other than offensive lineman, considering what happened to Joe Burrow last year, your franchise is basically right there in front of you. And to see him go down the way he did, and I'm not going to say it was a stupid pick to pick to pick Chase.
Jamar Chase is a great player.
Yes, I'm not saying it's a stupid pick whatsoever. Irresponsible, maybe. Yes, but at the same time, you have to give thanks, because if the Bengals end up drafting Penei Sewell, the Chargers are not getting Rashaan Slater at 13. So I feel good from that standpoint. Thanks to Cincinnati for making that gift fall into our laps. But at the same time, man, do I feel for Joe Burrow right now.
Whew. Yeah, you hope that kind of goes away as time goes on. You hope that kind of the cobwebs. You hope that fear. You see him kind of jumping away when offensive linemen are getting close, and he's not performing well. I think he's 5 for 12 with one pass beyond 10 yards or something today. Yes, thank you so much for getting Jamar Chase, because we got Rashaan Slater, and Rashaan Slater going up against Uchenna Nwosu, Joey Bosa, has manhandled. And I think there are a few reporters that were talking about they haven't seen Joey Bosa get stood up the way that he did against Rashaan Slater. And Rashaan Slater just doesn't go backwards. Was
it Popper that was freaking out on his tweet when Slater went in the one-on-ones? I can't remember if it was Popper or if it was Gilbert.
Every one of them did. I mean, everyone was like, oh, it's like WWF. I mean, everyone was excited. And to see Rashaan Slater stack up that well this early, he's only going to get better. And so Rashaan Slater being that anchor that this team has desperately needed. And as Chargers fans and folks covering the team have been clamoring for months, for years, not only did the Chargers draft an offensive lineman in round 1, but they drafted a damn good one, and he is balling out. And Jake, you and I were talking about it offline. Rashaan Slater, we're hearing a lot about him. What other offensive linemen out there, Chargers fans, are we hearing about? Like, we're hearing Rashaan Slater, but Jake, I haven't heard a peep about any other offensive lineman in round one. Now, I know it's probably biased. We talk Chargers all day long, but I really haven't heard anything nationally about Penny Sewell much. I haven't heard much about, like, I don't know, like Darisaw.
Darisaw's been out with a groin injury. That's the last I've heard. I haven't heard much on Sewell.
Elijah Tucker. Like,
I'll tell you this: it's unfortunate that he plays in our division now, but the one offensive lineman that I keep saying that's absolutely owning their respect to training camp is Trey Smith in Kansas City. Then yes, it's unfortunate that he just so happens to be on our division rival in that circumstance. But yeah, to your point, yeah, I haven't heard much from any of the other big name offensive linemen. And yes, we're reporting on the Chargers, so we're narrow focused on that. We're not necessarily going all over the place to see how other players are doing. But yeah, I get your point.
Now, one of the topics, we heard Brandon Staley talk about this for a bit on the press conference today, how well the rookies are performing now, especially with pads. And we saw Josh Palmer, which we'll be talking about in a bit. We saw Rashaan Slater. And Asante Samuel Jr., which we'll talk about some other ones too, but Asante Samuel Jr. is starting to kind of come into his element. And Brandon Staley talked today about how he is excited to see those instincts and athleticism that Asante Samuel Jr. has, and that they all saw coming out of college in Florida State. He's starting to showcase those, and he should have had 2 pick sixes. But Asante Samuel Jr. looks like a cat, and I love watching some of the film of him going up against Palmer and Mike Williams. And they say it, I know it's a tired saying, iron sharpens iron, but Asante Samuel Jr. is looking good. And so the question, thank you so much for Justin, a.k.a. Sue Light, do you think Samuel will become a starter? Jake, so let's fast forward week 4. Who are your starting 2 corners outside?
It's Mike Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. I know that there was a lot of banter going on when the first couple of days of camp, when you saw Brandon Faison being in there with the ones, and he started off good, ended up getting, I think it was a pass breakup while he was on day 1, and then everything from there was like, oh, Faison just got burned for those next 2 days. But everybody was wondering what's Faison doing in there with the ones? Why is it not Asante Samuel Jr. off the bat? So here's my reasoning behind it, and this was why I asked Ryan this after the first day of practice. Was, if you look at this cornerback stable the way it is right now, with the likes of Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Chris Harris, Brandon Faison, and now Ryan Smith in there to round it out. If you just take those 5, I don't think that there's any argument that if someone was to take the weak link out of that group, it would be Brandon Faison. I don't think there's any argument there.
Yep.
To me, this was a confidence-boosting move by Brandon Staley, because we understood that they ended up bringing him back. When you start looking at his physical measurables, it's one thing that he has an advantage over a lot of the other DBs aside from Mike Davis on this roster. He's still one of the bigger DBs of this group. 6'2", has some good athletic traits. We know he hasn't shown his playmaking ability that well, even in a small reserve role that he is on this team. But to me, this was a confidence boosting move by Brandon Staley to say, he's even already come out and say how much he likes from him from his athletic standpoint and what he could possibly bring to the team. So if I'm Brandon Staley, how do I want to, boost up some confidence from a guy who I know that probably isn't going to be any more than my 4th or 5th cornerback as a reserve? Well, tell you what, I'm going to put him in there against the best and see what he can do, see how he comes out mentally in the game. But even for me as a player, to know that I've got these other veteran guys on the roster, I just had the team draft a rookie come in, and for my coach to put some confidence in me for these first days of camp to go in there with the ones to give me confidence, or for Brandon Staley to see right off the bat whatever weaknesses that he needs to work on to develop him a little bit more. I think that's the biggest reason of why that was done. Now, Do I see Brandon Faison taking over a starting role over Asante Samuel Jr. or over Mike Davis? Absolutely not.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
No. Brandon Faison's ceiling is as a reserve. It's no higher. But look at you have to go back to the development of what Brandon Staley did specifically with the Rams and what he did there. And look at the development that he gave that defensive back unit for a number of guys, to where if one of these guys goes down for whatever reason, you don't want the drop off to be such a big difference, because we know when Brandon Faison has come into the lineup in the past, the opposing quarterbacks already automatically know that they're going to start picking on him. And then you're going to see 15 yards here, 20 yards here, broken coverage here. I think it strictly was a developmental purpose move for Brandon Faison, just to build up his confidence a little bit, and for Brandon Staley to identify the weaknesses that he needs to work on. But yes, come week 1 of September, Asante Samuel Jr. and Mike Davis should be the starters of this team.
I agree. And again, we want to preface this by there's going to be lots of different packages. So as we say, these are going to be the 2 outside. We've said it before. Faison is going to see some time. Chris Harris Jr. is going to be outside. You're going to see a lot to where you're not just going to have 2 guys outside all the time. So as much as we want to see him starting, him not quote unquote starting doesn't mean he's not going to be on the field all the time. I wouldn't be surprised seeing Asante Samuel Jr. inside all the time, which would be great. I mean, his instincts are made for that. So great question. For folks who are coming in, happy lunch hour. Happy Wednesday. It's hump day. What are you guys eating? Jake, have you had lunch yet today?
I haven't had lunch today yet. No.
Me neither. And I'm starving.
Irresponsible on my part.
Yes, at the minimum, we got to stay hydrated. So yeah, folks coming in, what are you guys eating? What are you guys doing for lunch? Thank you for coming in. If you guys have questions or comments or topics you want us to discuss, send them in the comments and we will get to them as we go. Jake, so another guy. We talked about Asante Samuel Jr. balling out as a rookie. We talked about Rashaan Slater balling out as a rookie. Another guy who had some unfortunate news today, Mark Webb. There were lots of folks clamoring about how good he has been and the flashes he has shown at camp. And I think he did have a pick 6. I want to say he has 2 interceptions this training camp so far. Today, had to get taken off the field, was looked at by trainers. I believe had a wrap around his leg. We haven't heard anything about how serious it is, which kind of, I think, might be a good thing. I don't know. Mark Webb is looking good. And we heard a lot of coaching staff talk about how excited they were to see him, and to get him in the 7th round shows you what Brandon Staley is able to do with these guys. Mark Webb is looking good, man. And then you start seeing Mark Webb's name come out. You start seeing like Alohi Gilman start trickling in, showing his progress. Like, I know you were one that was a little nervous about like the safety depth. I know it's still early, but seeing as we've heard more about the names of Alohi Gilman, and we heard Drue Tranquill today talk about how good he's looked. You're seeing Mark Webb develop. Are you as nervous today as you were 2 weeks ago about this safety depth?
Not so much after seeing Mark Webb come out the way he has in the first week of training camp. It's a very nice surprise. But it just goes to show you the mentality that was instilled in him with the DBs that he played around with in Georgia, bringing that same type of mentality here. You mentioned what he's already done a little bit there in training camp already, Dan, but he's doing pass breakups against matchups with Jared Cook. A guy who's far superior than him, should be able to block him out easily. Obviously has the height advantage over him there, but he's getting pass breakups against him. You already mentioned the interception and the pick 6, what he's doing. Brandon Staley talked about obviously where he's going to start, and this isn't any surprise, but Brandon Staley's already said that he's going to be a big factor for them on special teams. But what I like the most is that the versatility aspect, because just like it was in Georgia, and a lot of people were saying that out of the draft, is that he can be a hybrid in a multitude of different packages. So where are you going to put him? Are you going to put him as your third corner in certain situations outside of him being, coming in and being at your safety position? So he has so much versatility that he can play multiple roles on defense with, but obviously special teams wise, he's going to be a huge factor to start this season off. But hey, for a 7th round pick, wow, couldn't ask for any better start than that.
I don't think this is a low blow, but I wish we could have seen training camp last year to see what our 7th round pick last year could have looked like with the full training camp. And it's unfortunate. KJ Hill, I loved that pick last year. And I think it's super unfortunate for almost every rookie, but especially one like KJ Hill, where slot work in college is very different. And there's a whole different skill set and athlete profile on defense in the NFL. I'm really hope KJ Hill has to step up now. Like when his name is called, he's got to do something, whether it's special teams, whether it's in the slot, return. It doesn't matter. Like when he's called upon, he's got to go. You're seeing Austin Proehl do a lot. I mean, KJ Hill has his work cut out for him. And I hope that he can kind of showcase those abilities that he showed us at Ohio State when he was breaking records. But yeah, Mark Webb is showing how much value a 7th round pick could bring. And to be honest, the entire rookie class is showing out. Like it's awesome to see. I think we have been kind of jaded as a fan base in covering this team with how poorly some of the draft picks have been, like in the deeper parts of the draft in previous years, and how much we don't see come to fruition. And I know it's early, and a lot of us could be homers and a lot of us could be eating our words later, but to see this much impact from the rookies, it's fun to see. Philip Casey A. Callaway, thanks for the question, or the topic, I should say. Webb and Williams have a big year of growth ahead of him. I'm assuming he means Mike Williams. Very excited for both sides of the ball for the Bolts. So do we want to talk about Mike Williams now, or do we want to keep going on other topics that have come in? Because there's a lot of questions and comments that are coming in right now.
Man, keep the pace, man. Whatever.
All right. Well, we'll talk about Mike Williams in a bit. Shout out to M Fox for you, Micheladas. Jake, are you a fan of Micheladas, by the way?
I'm a fan of Micheladas, yes. And for having them on a Wednesday for lunch, fantastic.
Yep. All right. So shout out to Jason Burrick. I'm apologizing if I pronounce your name wrong. Greetings from Panama. Besides the wide receiver 3 competition, which competition are you looking forward to seeing the first preseason game? So Jake, I'll put that to you first.
It's a good question. Because for me,
I love this on the spot. We're like having to come up with this. No preview. We're just having to kind of think about this on the fly. Thank you for putting it on the spot, Jason. Keep them coming. This is fun.
I'll tell you what, I'll go one for offense, one for defense here, because it's hard for me to choose between the two because they're so intriguing. First on offense, I'll go running back for this, because this is obviously one that everybody thought was in flux, especially the first day of practice when we heard that Justin Jackson was out for COVID protocols. We didn't think that we were going to see him for a 10-day period. Nobody knows whether or not he was vaccinated or if he was unvaccinated. I think it came out later that he was vaccinated, but whatever. He ended up coming back the very next day and resumed his number 2 spot because a lot of people thought that he was going to lose a ton of reps. And again, it was just another preseason hurdle that he's had to overcome so many times now over these last couple of years. And to me, he hasn't lost his number 2 spot behind Austin Eckler. Where it's going to get really intriguing now is between Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree. We had our discussions about this during our running back breakdown, Dan. And from what we know about Larry Roundtree, again, just being this coaching staff, this regime's pick, a lot of the production that he did coming out of college, we thought that this was going to be a guy who could easily unseat Joshua Kelly for that number 3 running back spot.
Yeah.
But to be perfectly honest, I haven't really seen much on either guy, to be perfectly honest with you, in this first week. I haven't seen much news about either, or either one having a leg up on the other. So that to me is going to be the one to watch. It'd be interesting to see who ends up getting kept. Could all 4 of them remain on this roster? Absolutely. But to win that 3rd running back spot at this point in time, I think is a very intriguing matchup between, a guy who was a 6th overall pick last year and a 4th overall pick. 6th overall pick this year, 4th overall pick last year. But again, both guys are extremely different If I were to bet money on it, I would give it to Larry Roundtree at this point to say that he'll end up having a better preseason than Kelly. But from week to week, the thing to watch will be when are these guys coming into the game, what quarters, and what's their snap count going to be. And as it gets closer again, because we don't have 4 games anymore, we only have 3. So the timetable for that has now shrunk dramatically. So it's going to be interesting here as we get closer to our first preseason game on that as far as a position to watch. The other one, I will say, is interior defensive line.
That's what I was going to say. Let's go.
And beyond your 3 starters that you have in Linval Joseph, Jerry Tillery, and Justin Jones, I've been hearing a lot of news about Breiden Fehoko. Apparently he has dramatically improved from where he was last year, has already gotten in on a couple sacks in practice.
Shout out the Hawkeye.
You have brought in Christian Covington to be some more veteran depth in that circumstance. I'm a big fan of Forrest Merrill, but I haven't heard squat from him, so I don't think that's going to end up coming to fruition. But Breiden Fehoko is a name to definitely keep an eye on as we get closer to preseason, because in practice it appears he's been making a lot of noise.
I totally agree, and I guess less interior defensive line, but just the defensive line as a whole. Quick shout out, G Flores. Thank you so much for the kind words. Where are you located, by the way? You're out in the LA area. Just curious. Defensive line as a whole, Jake, I think is something that I'm excited for, because in years past, you knew what defensive line was going to look like, and you knew what players are going to be there, where they're going to look, and all that kind of stuff. This year, there are so many players who can be quote unquote on the line, right? You've got Joey Bosa, you've got Uchenna Nwosu, you've got Justin Jones, Jerry Tillery, Linval Joseph, you've got Kyler Fackrell, you've got Chris Rumpf. There's so many guys who can be on the defensive line. And so I don't know if it's more of a position battle, but it's more of just how are those guys going to be kind of cycled in and out? Because I don't remember a defensive front that has this many options and this many tools in the toolbox for this team to succeed. And so I'm curious to see, they talk about, it's not a depth chart, but it's a rep chart. I'm curious to see, at the end of games, which ones, so we'll look at preseason, game 1. I'm curious who on the defensive line is getting the most reps. Not necessarily the depth chart, because is it going to be Linval Joseph in your interior? Or is it going to be a Tillery? Or is it going to be there's so many, everybody talks about it being multiple. I have no clue what that defensive line is going to look like in terms of personnel from a week-to-week basis.
If I'm Staley and I'm the coach, if you're just talking about rep count, I'd probably be saying I'm giving a lot of reps to Tillery. I would be, just from the standpoint of, if you look at Linval Joseph and you look at Justin Jones may not have the big time production. Obviously, again, he's only gotten 1 sack in the last few years that he's been with this team. But I think just from not only just his veteran status, but how he plays the game, what he's good at in terms of stopping the run, Tillery still needs refinement. And this is a huge make or break year for Jerry Tillery. Mm-hmm. So all the talk that we've been hearing, especially from guys like Linval Joseph, talking about how he's progressed in the last year or so, everything looks good right now. But I would be wanting to give, say, an extra 10 reps to a Jerry Tillery in a game, just to give it a little bit of extra film study afterwards, for him to either work on, better himself, or to review. So whichever you want to look at it, but that would be a player I would be zeroing in on.
Yeah, Jerry Tillery is someone that folks have talked about all offseason about how much he's improved and how he's ready to take that next step. And Jake, you and I have talked about, I personally think that Jerry Tillery has the best opportunity to become that Leonard Floyd role. And for folks who have not been out to training camp, Jerry Tillery is a big man. You look at him on the field, he is a freak. So if he could get the right coaching, get the skill sets honed in, even last year, he was an inch away from making several plays, but just couldn't finish. And so if we can get that attention to detail up, I'm telling you, I know people are low on Jerry Tillery and folks are waiting for it and are a little impatient. Jerry Tillery is going to do things this year that you have not expected or seen in the past. In terms of him specifically at training camp, Mr. Fox, you won. I love your name, by the way. I have not actually heard much about Jerry Tillery. And so I'm curious to see if we see something from him at the podium in the next coming days. Jake, found out that the folks who are having micheladas at lunch, that is because they are actually off on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. So they get to enjoy it. Lucky them. And real quick, Jake, on your days off, you know what I'm drinking? I know what you're drinking. Brewery X up in Anaheim. For folks who have not been to Brewery X, got to pay the bills here, Jake. Check out Brewery X. They have an amazing selection of spirits. They've got beers, they've got IPAs, they've got seltzers, they've got jungle juice, and they actually have incredible food. They have these buffalo chicken like tater tot things, Jake. Dude, it is ridiculous. They have amazing pizzas. Check them out. Brewery X. We're actually going to be doing some live shows there in the future on site. We'll put out more details when we get there. But check out Brewery X up in Anaheim. Friends of the show. Fantastic. Both beers and spirits. Check them out. I don't think they have micheladas. Sorry. Let's see. What else we got here? Despite Samuel likely starting, how well did Face On perform? Just hoping they have some good depth.
Day one was good.
Crickets.
Day one was good. Then it kind of fell off a little bit there. I guess that's the best way I could put it. Day one was good. Day one was good. Again, you hope. Again, I'll go back to this. You hope as a reserve in terms of Face-On's development that Staley can make that better. Does he have the ceiling to be a consistent starter for this team over the players that are currently on this roster? No, he doesn't. But if you can develop him as a better reserve to when certain players need to come off the field or certain packages, or God forbid if someone gets injured, you can hopefully make the bleeding a lot less than what it was when he has been in the game previously.
Jake, you're great with impressions. Where the hell have you been? Gives a comment.
Nice Vince McMahon reference again.
How do you foresee that comment sounding? How is he saying it?
I know. Well, see, this is an advantage for me because I know exactly how he said it because I was watching him while he said it. It was takes the hand over here and then looks out to the audience and says, "Where the hell have you been?" And then walks off the stage, and that's all he said.
Love it. Where the hell have you been? Thank you so much for joining us. And yes, I agree. Chargers with 4 R's, 4 G's, 4 R's again, and 3 S's with a lot of lightning bolts.
13 Q's, 17 R's.
Did I hear a Niner in there, Jake? All right, I got another one for you, Jake. Angel Flores. I love these questions coming. These are fun. Folks who are out there, should we do this again? Do you like this? Let us know what we should do differently or keep the same. Jake, Angel Flores asked a question, which we actually are going to talk about here in a bit. Talk a lot about Mark Webb. Hopefully he's doing okay. We're seeing a lot of Mark Webb, and we're not hearing a lot about Nasir Adderley, although I think we're going to. I have lots of stock in Nasir Adderley this year. Do you think he could steal Adderley's spot? This is a good question. Shout out Angel Flores. Thank you.
I know early returns are already looking good on Mark Webb, and it's the hot thing to talk about now for a 7th round pick already performing the way that he is. I won't go as far as to say that right now. No, I don't predict that he's going to overtake Nasir Adderley's job. Again, we have not seen Nasir Adderley and Derwin James play football together in a regular season game, which is insane to say that considering the fact that this is going to be the 3rd year that Nasir Adderley has been on this team. And we still haven't seen that combination actually play out. So I'm going to say no, it's way too early to say something like that. I think from the benefit standpoint is that I think that they're already tooling around Nasir Adderley in a lot of different positions other than just free safety. So this is where Staley's becoming creative with his defensive schemes. So I think you may see a little bit more, depending on how the defensive packages goes, you may see a defensive package that has Nasir Adderley, Derwin James, and Mark Webb on the field at the same time, depending on who's playing what position. Who knows? But no, I would not go as far as to say that Mark Webb is going to overtake Nasir Adderley right now. Absolutely not.
So Blue Deftone asked a question related to it. Can Mark Webb start over Tavon Campbell?
Right now, yeah.
Sure. Easy one.
Sure.
Yes, I agree. Blue Deftone, thank you for the easy question. That was a layup softball hit out of the park. Thank you. Jake, I'm gonna give you an aw shucks moment. Shout out to Ramon Osa. Again, I apologize if I cannot pronounce your guys' names. That's one of my downfalls of many. Guys, can't tell you how awesome it is to be listening to such an in-depth analysis from you. Great insights. You've got season tickets, section 235. Let's go, Bolt. Shout out section 235. Ramon, thank you. Or Raymond, thank you so much.
Dan, where's your season tickets at?
I'm in the 300 level, baby. I'm up in the corner.
Okay.
And I can actually show you where our seats are. Let's see if I can do this live. And I apologize if I can't.
Well, you don't need to show it. All I was gonna say is like, oh, okay, so you have to go down if you want to say hi to Ramon.
I do. Ramon's in the good seats.
You have to go down.
Yes. Ramon's making more money than me, apparently. Shout out Ramon. I love it. And I'm really curious, Ramon, tell us about your logo there. That 360 looks sweet. Let's see. So, Jake, we talked about Mark Webb a bunch. We've talked about Desir Adderley. We've talked about most of the guys. Have we attended training camp so far, Blue Deftone? Yes, we have. I have attended. I've attended one. I attended day one. I actually also attended the Rams training camp. Jake, I believe you and I are scheduled to potentially be going to training camps this weekend. So if folks are out there, don't be a stranger. Come say hi. And training camps, for those who have not been there, by the way, are a ton of fun. I've been to both Chargers and Rams. I will say Rams are much bigger than Chargers, but I think that is by design for both teams. The Chargers, where they're situated, like their bleachers, is a lot smaller. I think they're going for more of that intimate feel. I'm sure you're going to hear people gripe about, oh, they don't have any fans. Like, it's not true. But much more intimate. But there's benefits of that. Like, the players will come right up to like the 10-foot line and start chucking things for autographs. They'll talk to players, talk to staff. Like, it's a really cool environment. So if folks have not gone to training camp this year, highly, highly recommend doing it. A lot of fun. There's a bunch of players, bunch of the Bolt fam out there on Twitter that you haven't seen before. So definitely go. Another question, Jake. We haven't talked much about this so far, but I think this has been a thorn in the side of so many people for years on this Chargers team. Jake, who the hell is going to be this Chargers kicker? We've seen Chargers kickers have actually performed very well so far in camp. In the little we've seen, I think we saw both of them go 100% yesterday or the day before. If your money, pun intended, was on a kicker, first off, are you still bankrupt from last year's money, Badger? And second, where are you putting your money this year?
Is there a prop bet? Is anybody taking bets on this competition? Can we generate something, please? Because it just got interesting today. Because up until now, I think as of yesterday, all the kickers were virtually either, it was a dead heat. They were virtually all even on all the kicks that they made. Money Badger today during practice, I think went 3 for 5. He made, if I remember correctly, it was 43, 45, and 50, and then his 2 misses was a 49, and I can't remember the other one.
Hold on. Did I hear you say he made a field goal from 50?
Yeah, but it's practice.
Hallelujah! Let's go! We got practice.
One. It's practice, man. Come on. So
it's the little things.
If I were to put my money on what's going to be the closest competition for Mike Badgley throughout training camp, and yes, it's unfortunate that we have to be talking about the kicking competition again. Look at Alex Kissman. Look at what he's. I mean, again, you go back and you watch what he did in college. Pretty impressive numbers that he put up, and already during camp, he seems to be hanging in there pretty well with Mike Badgley. So it was him and Tristan. I can't pronounce his name correctly, but Vizcaino, is that how his name is pronounced? I believe.
I think it's Vizcanzo.
Yeah. Whichever, but they've both actually been in a dead heat within themselves. But if you're asking me right now, gun to my head, put money on it, who's going to win out training camp?
Oh,
I'm going to say it's going to be Alex Kissman.
Ooh, okay. We just got word from Ryan Dyrud, founder of LAFB. We are partnered with Play Pickup. We're actually going to get a prop bet created for this, Jake, so we could actually see the man of the people.
Thanks, boss.
Shout out. And also, Jake, we have a question here, and I think this is a really important one. Jake, how's life in the bunker?
Well, as you can see, my bunker is a nice teal blue-gray. It's just fine for those that are asking.
For folks who I feel like, Jake, you'd be great as like a weatherman. Like that view you just gave us where weather, you got high precipitation in the highs up in the Northeast. The way you were just showcasing your teal background, I was like, you got another job if you ever want it.
Shit, I'd be a horrible weatherman, dude. Because I'd have too much fun with it. I'd dick around with people and their locations and their temperatures and everything like that.
You start drawing
I'd have too
stuff.
much. Yeah, I'd have too much fun with it. Especially with it being a green screen, I'd really screw around with it. I'd be like Brick in Anchorman 2, where it's just everything goes berserk with a green screen.
Yes, Jorge Rodriguez. We've got Ryan Dyrud in the building. What's up, friend of the show? We've got friends in high places. Yes. Jorge Rodriguez. All right. Let's see. Raymond. I can't freaking pronounce his name. This sucks. Shout out to his wife, by the way. Wife bought the 200 level tickets.
See, that right there, you found a good one. Awesome.
Yes.
So good.
Yes, and he's got a tennis business. Raymond, send us a DM. I'm curious. I want to know more about this tennis business because side tangent, Jake. My wife and I have started playing pickleball. I don't know if you ever played that, but damn, I am like dripping sweat, ton of fun, and I'm grateful that I used to play tennis for a bit because otherwise I'd be getting whooped by like lots of folks that are twice my age. Jake, quick question here, and I love that this is actually a question that we get to ask. This defense has been ready to play. They have had energy all camp, and it's been talked about at length. Do you think Joe Lombardi's offense is up to the task of being able to go against them?
Well, again, I had to preface this on day one when we were talking about this, how people were saying on day one that the offense looked bad. In practices like this, I don't really think you could say that offenses look bad because I think they got wins on each other, but the defense has been winning out, it seems like, more consistently through this first week. So the defense has been winning. The offense after day one, I feel like has come back in a big way, especially you credit that to some of the plays that Tyron Johnson has made thus far. I think Herbert's looked a lot more crisper in practices. There's a lot of players that we haven't even talked about yet that have looked great from an offensive standpoint, especially when they've been running red zone drills. So, yes, do I think that they're going to get their better days of their defense? Sure, but you're talking about two very talented groups of people here. If it's me, I'm excited for the fact that we're seeing this defense ball out a lot more because really that's a huge Achilles heel that was part of this team last year, unfortunately. You could put up 45 points if you wanted to, that Justin Herbert was capable of that. But unfortunately, it just seemed like you couldn't trust your defense to stop the opposing team from putting up 47. So I'm happy to see, especially with Derwin James back, this defense ball out. I'm not really too concerned about the offense. Know this, though. There will be some adjustment period. And that's going to come in practice. That's going to come early parts of the season.
It has
to. I'm talking certain position groups here. Because, yes, you are talking about a new coach, a new offensive scheme. For Justin Herbert, this will be his fourth consecutive year with a new offensive scheme that he's had to go through. And you take that all the way back to the time when he was in Oregon. But a fourth consecutive year of that. I don't have any doubts that he can adapt. But you're talking about 4/5 of your offensive line that was now reshuffled in free agency in the draft. So you have 4 new personnel along there. So obviously Corey Linsley and the rest of the guys have to get used to playing with one another. Jared Herbert has to get used to playing with them. And of course, from a receiver dynamic, it looks like It looks, obviously, for certain guys like Keenan Allen and Tyron Johnson, it looks like they're picking up right where they left off in 2020, which is great. But there is going to be an adjustment period for this offense. So if you see the defense winning a little bit more, I think it's strictly from that standpoint and the adjustments that have to be made.
It's a good question, and I really appreciate this. It's actually fun that we get to talk about this, because if we look at how this offense was last year versus this defense, like this offense was head and shoulders better than this defense in terms of like your eye test is telling you this offense looks way more together than the defense did. Now, like, sure, some of that was because there's a lot of guys injured. Some of it was because we just didn't have the personnel. But to be able to see this Chargers offense now having to go up against a scheme that isn't just kind of vanilla, like, that's all you can dream of. And so do I think that this offense can hold up with his defense? Yes. Will it take a while? Definitely. And like, that's the point. And that's why we have Brandon Staley, Ronaldo Hill. This defense is designed to make life uncomfortable for offensive players and playmakers across the board. If Justin Herbert and crew can find a way, and again, they're never going to get the best of them all the time. This defense is damn good. But if Justin Herbert and crew can be adequate against this defense, I feel comfortable with them going against any defense in the NFL. So, yes, it's going to take a bit, but that's a good thing. Like, you want this, and Brandon Staley talks about it, you want this to be difficult and hard for Justin Herbert because he wants that. Like, Justin Herbert needs to be challenged. He's asked for that. And so Brandon Staley's like, all right, that's what you want. Let's go.
Just go back to the comments that Corey Lindsley said yesterday after practice when asked about how is it going against the Brandon Staley-led defense. Quote, it's a pain in the butt.
Yep.
So it's not an easy task. And you can already see with a defensive-minded head coach that even still takes the approaches from a quarterback perspective that he's bringing it. Remember, we said this. Brandon Staley is still having his hands in the defense. And for a guy who developed the #1 defense in the league last year, look at it from that perspective. That's something to be excited about because the offense is only going to get better even if it means that they're losing these reps against their own defense. They're only going to get better. So yep. I'm not too worried about the offense. Again, you got to go through a little bit of attrition here, a little bit of time to adjust. But from a defensive perspective, you got to be hyped up from what you've seen from this group thus far.
Totally. And thank you, Trey, giving us the good word. Vizcaino is 4 syllables.
Thank you.
I butchered that earlier. Vizcaino.
I did it. It's my fault.
No, I did too. I just followed right along with you. You know what it was? I was getting Costanzo and Vizcaino mixed up for some reason, and it came out Visconzo. So thank you, Trey, man of the people. We got a lot of folks agreeing with you, Jake, him being the kicker. So folks are putting prop bets in. Let's start with that. Apparently,
I was picking Kissman, but whoever wants to pick. I was picking Kessman, but whoever wants to take him, go for it. I'm interested to see. Again, Ryan, let's get this bet up so collectively we can all place some wagers on this. This is going to be interesting.
This is going to be great. It's going to be great. All right, so Ian Alexander brings up a topic. You and I touched on it at the top, Jake. Offensive line storyline so far. Everyone was excited to see Derwin James back. Everyone was excited to see Drue Tranquill. And all of a sudden you're seeing the defensive line just absolutely roast the offensive line early in training camp. And when we talked to Ryan early on after the recap, there's a big difference in offensive line play with and without pads, like night and day. And so I think we've talked about it. Ryan's talked about it many times. We have to pump the brakes on this offensive line isn't going to be good. They're getting roasted with no pads. Like, that's not the case. Evidenced by the first day Rashaan Slater goes up against folks in pads. Weird. He's now balling. Brian Bulaga has been out. We're hoping he's good. I think he's got a Veterans Day, so I know folks were worried about his hand because it was wrapped yesterday. I believe he is just fine. Offensive line does take time to gel. especially when you're returning only one of your entire starting offensive line group. It takes time. The good news is we have Brandon Staley, and we have all-pro center Corey Linsley. We have Matt Filer. We've got Ode Ibushi. We've got Brian Balaga. Like, we have the skill set. We have not had that before. And so if the only thing we got to do is just let them gel, amen, hallelujah. Like, we've never had that. So give it time. Again, we have had pads on for what, like a day and a half, if that. So offensive line is gelling, but I'm honestly not worried about the offensive line outside of the thing we don't want to talk about. So just want to put that out there. Offensive line will be just fine. Shout out Rashaan Slater. Thank you, man of the people. Vic, Jake, I'm going to let you start saying some of these folks' names. You guys make my wife...
Hey, you have the access over there, so...
You guys make my work life easier. Thank you, Bolt Gang. You guys make our life more fun. Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Okay, how would you... Vicks?
Vicks. Like Vicks NyQuil.
Like
Vicks.
Okay.
Just more emphasis on the Vicks.
Mr. Fox, you won. Hit that like button, peeps. Thank you. Shout out. Folks, you want to hit the like button. Not going to tell you no. Blue Deftone, Jake. We can talk about it for a bit now. Derwin James out on the football field in pads. The hashtag Kelsey stopper. Not sure which Kelsey he's talking about, but I know which Kelsey he's referring to. The hashtag Kelsey stopper. Derwin James now out there flying around. You see him going up against Keenan Allen. I mean, the Chargers put out a video yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, Jake, of two plays back to back, and it was the second
several
play.
Times.
The second play where Keenan Allen has like an in route that turns into an out route quickly, and Derwin James is like a cat. And I don't know how the hell he stayed with that, and his closing speed is on point. But watching Keenan Allen and Derwin James play football together is must-see television. I know everybody talks about, so excited to see Strap Harris go up against Keenan Allen, which I am excited for that too. But yeah, Derwin James makes Keenan Allen look ordinary. And that's not not in a bad way, but normally Keenan Allen makes everyone look silly who's guarding him. Derwin James is on his level. And you can't say that about many people.
I don't think I could say any more from a skill set, player ability than that you said. We both talked about Derwin James on this show ad nauseum. I think one of the biggest things that we saw from the early camps, videos of training camp, and then even today in Brandon Staley's press conference, is he understands the difference maker that he is on defense, not just from being on the field, but from a locker room and leadership standpoint. As he said today, players respond to him, which is one of the reasons that he has decided to put the green dot on his helmet. So he's got the direct communication with him when he's on the field. Even that was the last question that he answered today in his press conference. And I think he was saying, if there was two guys that I would pick right off the bat, it would be Joey Bosa and Derwin James. But for Derwin, the way that the players respond to him, the way he, commands the locker room, I can't, and this was his exact quote, I can't imagine a better player to have him doing it than him. So that just goes to show you from a coach that really hasn't even been with him for a full season, for him to already identify that. Again, it shouldn't take that long for anybody to identify that when you're talking about Derwin James, but still, thank you, Captain Obvious. But yeah, it's a great vote of confidence that Brandon Staley already understands that as a coach. And so to see him put that type of confidence in Derwin, which then is going to then trickle down into the rest of the players on this defense, is a perfect move. But then I'm going to switch gears for a second, because one position that I've actually been wanting to talk about that we haven't talked about yet is the tight end position. Is the tight end position. Jared Cook, Donald Parham. You think Joe Lombardi knows how to properly infuse Jared Cook in this offense? I do. I think this is going to be a huge weapon for Justin Herbert. And to see some of the connections that they've already been getting on the field in the red zone We've talked about this with some other guys from GAC, the 2 tight end sets in the red zone, things that the Chargers historically have never done because you haven't had 2 offensive tight end weapons, the calibers of a Jared Cook or even a Donald Parham, even though he's very young when it comes to being in the NFL. But to use those 2 tight end sets and to have both of them catch touchdown passes in those packages, I cannot wait to see the mismatches that these guys can create with their size and strength advantage and just such a short distance to cover on what they're going to be able to do. I think that Joe Lombardi and Brandon Staley are going to have a ball when it comes to getting creative in the red zone packages.
One of the things that Brandon Staley talked about early on, and I think Joe Lombardi said the same thing, was they talked about mismatches. They talked about getting their playmakers in positions to succeed. There are so many mismatch players on this offense. You could talk about an Austin Eckler, who I think is a mismatch on arguably any defender. You could talk about Mike Williams, who can go up and get it against anyone in the NFL. Keenan Allen is always open. I mean, who's going to out-jump Chicken Parm? Like, nobody. Trey McKitty's a great blocker. So you want him to block someone in the red zone? Go for it. Jared Cook, honestly, he's got a lot of finesse. I think he talked about, someone talked about the press conference today. Drue Tranquill talked about how back in the day with Hunter Henry, he was a little bit more physical. Like, he want to get up on you, kind of like Antonio Gates was. Cook is a little bit more like fine-tuned, and he'll run around. He'll jiggle a little bit at the beginning of the line of scrimmage. And so there's a ton of different mismatches on offense that are going to be huge. And yes, in the red zone especially, we've got like 4 or 5 guys who can go up and get it. Like, think about this, Jake. You have guys, if you're wanting to do like a fade route, or if you want to do like a shield off, kind of like Antonio Gates did, where you had like basketball position, you've got Josh Palmer, Mike Williams. You could have Jason Moore if you want. You've got Trey McKitty potentially. You've got Cook. You've got Chicken Parm. You've got like 6 guys. I mean, if they're starting a basketball league, like, they're good. So, like, I love that part of this offense and getting the tight ends more in the plays. And we talked about it on the tight end position battles episode a while back. Go look at the stats of Hunter Henry versus Jared Cook. I will bet a nice 6-pack of Brewery X something that you're going to see more yards per catch with this tight end group than you have the last 4 years under Anthony Lynn and Hunter Henry. Like, Hunter Henry is a good tight end. Don't get me wrong, but he's not that deep down the field threat. And so I love the way our tight end position is wrapping up. I think it's going to look very good this year, and it's going to be an advantage for this group. And Blue Deftone had a question here that is actually pointed, and actually great timing, by the way. Want to get our opinion on Jared Cook and him potentially being more of an Antonio Gates role.
Yeah.
Do you see that being him?
100%. I mean, look what he did. Even if you go back to New Orleans last year, I mean, I think he led all position players offensively, aside from Alvin Kamara, obviously, but just in terms of 7 touchdowns, because they didn't have Mike Thomas last year. I mean, that's a big bulk of their, offensive output. And again, for a guy his age, he had very good output for that team last year. The chemistry between Jared Cook talked about this, the chemistry that him and Justin Herbert have already been developing, that Justin Herbert's already anticipating, when he's going to be making his cuts, the transition, the route running, they're talking about it constantly. So yes, I don't think that this is outrageous to say that he's going to, could end up being that third option in the passing game. Not at all. Especially if you look at it in the red zone. Hell yes. From a TD perspective, he should be getting an immense amount of targets. So just like Antonio Gates did, Jared Cook does not look like he's not looking like he's playing like his age, by the way. He definitely does not. Whatever you want to say about how old he is, he definitely doesn't look that way so far. So I'm interested to see especially if you take what Joe Lombardi saw from him in New Orleans, what he knows about him, how he can get involved in this offense, you got to think that that's going to be a big staple of their offensive game plan, is getting the ball to Jared Cook. And yes, it could be a little bit under the water when you think about the offensive weapons that the Chargers have. Jared Cook could have a great season for this team and sneaky good fantasy value for anybody that wants to go that route.
Good call. And again, I would rather see, do I think he could do that? Yes, but I think he's going to be more down the field. And I've always said that. I think he's going to have a much bigger impact with this passing game, 15 yards, than Hunter Henry ever did. Like Hunter Henry was like 10 yards in pretty much every time. Ryan Dyrud gives a quick comment. Expect them out wide, which, did we ever see tight ends out wide last year? Like,
what are we talking about? Through in between the 20s in the red zone? No. You saw the same package every first down, which you knew it was going to be a run. Absolutely not.
Yep. Now, Robert Solaris brings up an interesting observation. I love that the 6'2" corners are starting outside. 5'11" guys are inside. Slot defenders. This shows Staley is truly understanding personnel to me. So Mike Davis, and for folks who have not seen Mike Davis in person, like, he's all of 6'2". He's a tall dude. Chris Harris, not small by any means. You got Brandon Faison, also not small. He has that size you want. You just want to see him develop more. And then you've got like that scrappiness. Chris Harris, you've got Asante Samuel Jr. inside, Mark Webb inside. Like, there's a lot of folks that can do, although Mark Webb's a little bit bigger. I love having this defense scheme where you can
cat.
Clearly.
So does your cat, apparently.
My cat does this thing, by the way. Whenever she eats, she likes to announce to everyone, like, I did it. It was delicious. I want more. That's what I think that she's saying. But I digress. The corners and the safeties and just kind of the defensive backs as a whole, we are so fortunate to have a defensive staff that understands personnel and is versatile in being able to put folks in different positions. We've never had that before. And it just makes me giggle inside a little bit every time I see it, where, like, when you go to a training camp, Jake, and you're watching this defense, like, it makes you feel like you're a little elementary when it comes to, like, what's going on here, because it's really kind of confusing watching this defense line up. Like, you don't know where folks are coming from, and you're like having to quickly go back and see like who numbers what and where they're coming from, and then having to like hopefully go back to your video later and see who that was. I love the versatility and I love the personnel Staley has and being able to kind of deploy them however he wants. Excellent call. Jake, we're past an hour. We're going to be wrapping this up here in a little bit here. Another question comes in from Blue Deftone, although he says he thinks this is kind of an obvious question. Do you think, I think everybody wants this, and I think the goal is to have this Brady-Manning rivalry for a decade and have all this like must-see television and stuff. Do you think, and I know we're being homers here, but do you think that Herbert and Mahomes, not can they be, but will they be that next rivalry that is must-see TV every time?
It's not a bad dream to have. This would be an awesome rivalry to have. I don't think it's started personally yet between the two of them, especially for the fact that as of now, Kansas City is 2-0 over Justin Herbert as it stands. But I think if you look towards this year and things get a little bit more interesting, I think the Chargers will definitely be much more competitive with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this year. Do I still think that the Chiefs will end up winning out the division? Unfortunately, yes, I do. But I think that the Chargers are definitely they'll be better than what they were last year. And yes, I think that this could be, if we're talking about two guys who we could be seeing playing against one another for the next 10 years, I mean, my God, forget about the AFC West championship games. I mean, think about if you got a chance to see these guys play not twice, but 3 times a year in the playoffs. I mean, think about That's more than what Manning and Brady would normally get a chance to play. I mean, obviously they'd always have one regular season game, and then most likely they would see each other in the playoffs. But think if you got these guys to play 3 times a year in both the regular season and in the playoffs.
Bring that, please.
I mean, think if that happened consistently for like the next like 3 or 4 years. Imagine what type of rivalry that would develop. That would just be insane. So it has all the makings of it. I think everything there is in place. Let's just enjoy and let it play out.
Yeah, the fact that we get to have a quarterback that brings us this much excitement, again, in context, after we let Phillip Rivers go, and say what you will about Phillip Rivers the last few years and potentially throwing some turnovers, he was a damn good quarterback, in my opinion, Hall of Fame, no question. It's hard to go from a quarterback of that level and then expect to have your next quarterback to be great. I mean, like, look at the Browns, look at the Bengals, look at the Jets. Look how many folks that they have churned through in an attempt to get just a competent quarterback. And here we are, offensive rookie of the year. Folks are talking about like the next Mahomes, Manning, Brady. Like, just take a second and appreciate the fact where we're at. That he has a long way to go. Justin Herbert looks very good. But man, I mean, yes, you're right. One could dream about that being the next big rivalry. They're on their way. I love kind of the dueling personalities. Like, they're both pretty humble. Like, they're both good. It's hard to not like Patrick Mahomes as much as he's in our division, but he's a good guy. But they're both humble. Like, they're both just good guys. And so they're easy to root for. I love what this rivalry could bring. And it's not just what it could bring to Chargers fans or to Chiefs fans, but just AFC West as a whole. Like, I would argue AFC West is the best division in football right now. And that's largely because of those two. I mean, you could talk about Seattle's division.
I was going to say, I think Ryan might have to have a few words with you on that one.
If the Raiders weren't in our division, I might have a better opportunity to say that.
Rams, Arizona, 49ers. That's nuts as far as a whole goes for a division. So, yes, we're competitive. Yes, the Broncos are going to get better. The Raiders, I don't know yet. But as far as the Chiefs and the Chargers goes, yes, that's going to be a hell of a competition.
Yeah, it's time to bowl. Who's pulling the cat's tail? I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of cats meowing earlier. First, the cat was eating, and then my wife was outside. And my cat does not like being away from my wife and seeing her from the other side. No one's pulling her tail. Lavender is fine. She's doing just great. Yes, Jorge Rodriguez, enjoy Herbert, because before you know it, he'll be giving his Hall of Fame speech and getting his number retired. Ooh, I like that. Sure, I guess Mahomes is the enemy, but you also can respect how great he is. All right, Jake, I feel like we can't go this episode without talking about it. Last topic.
I know what you're going to say, but there's two things actually that we should say, because I was thinking the exact same thing. We would be remiss, obviously, if we didn't talk about the Mike Williams situation, but there's one more guy that if we walked out of here and we didn't mention what he's done thus far in training camp, I think we get like a digital slap across the face.
Okay. Ooh, digital slap across the face. All right, Jake, go for it. Kick it off.
How about the reemergence of Kaiser White?
I got to give you props and like golf clap here for a bit. We were talking to Chris Harry, and you and I had talked about it previously, and you were saying, you're talking about the versatility that he brings and how potentially, like, is there a role for him, like, in that hybrid safety role? Do you see Brandon Staley deploying that? And I love Chris Harry's answer. For those who haven't listened to the podcast, go listen to it. It was great. But I think his answer was like, well, hell, if they're gonna do it, sure as hell are they gonna tell me. And now fast forward a couple weeks, like, they're doing exactly what you had predicted or hoped that they would do or questioned. So, Jake, kudos to you. I will give you all the credit when deserved. And damn it, you deserve it. You were spot on with this.
I mean, I don't know if it necessarily what he's done in training camp answers my question. The whole thought process was on it just based off of, again, and this was before training camp started, about the lack of depth. A lot of people were saying that in free agency we could add another safety, which I think is still the right move that could possibly be done. We'll see what happens by the time the end of training camp rolls around. But just for the fact that Kaiser White played safety at West Virginia, and when you look at the linebacking group that we thought as of this week was your incumbent starters were going to be Kenneth Murray and Drue Tranquill, that hasn't been the case. It has been much more Kenneth Murray and Kaiser White than it has Drue Tranquill being in that mix. And since Kaiser White has been on the field, holy crap, he has been making plays hand over fist in coverage, pass breakups, interceptions. This was the flashes that we saw from him. Remember his rookie season, Dan, in those first 8 games when he came in? These are the flashes of that guy that we're starting to see again. And Brandon Staley talked about it as far as his physical versatility. He said he moves like a safety, hits like a linebacker, which is exactly what it is. So to have that type of scheme versatility where you have a guy who can be so fluid and move at that part of the field with that type of speed and change of direction, it's a fantastic thing to add to this linebacking group. Again, when you're talking about guys like what Kenneth Murray is doing right now in training camp, and to have the return of Drue Tranquill, when we know, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to see it last year, but what he did in his rookie season, you're talking about 3 very diverse guys as far as their skill sets goes. So how Brandon Staley is going to end up implementing getting all 3 of these guys production on the field, I can't wait to see this. This is going to be some exciting stuff. But Kaiser White has been nothing but a straight baller since training camp started for this first week.
Yep, I love Kaiser White. And it's funny because for years, especially you and I, we've talked about wanting players with versatility. We wanted players that can bring multiple skill sets to this team and can kind of be the next man up at many positions when called upon. Unfortunately, given the Gus Bradley era, like, if we're being honest, like, versatility doesn't mean much because, like, guys just kind of stick to their role and they're just kind of chilling there. Now it feels like, the handcuffs are off, and now versatility can actually be utilized with this coaching staff. And so you're seeing Bosa out in coverage. Like, you're seeing Alohi Gilman all of a sudden in the box. You're starting to see Kaiser White everywhere, Mark Webb everywhere. And that's the stuff that, like, good coaches get the best out of their players, regardless of position. And if you see a guy who can do something or do many things well, you take it. You don't stay stubborn. You don't stay in your ways. You take what you have and you bring the best out of it. Kaiser White is a perfect example of that. Drue Tranquill is another example of that. Sidebar, Drue Tranquill at the podium today, there is no question he is, if not the best communicator, one of the best communicators on this team. He is unquestioned leader. I love his mentality when it comes to the game. Takes pride in special teams, leadership, communication. The guy just has it all. And I can't tell you how underappreciated or how much this team was missing Drue Tranquill last year. He was having the best training camp of any player on this team before he went out. So can't wait to see Drue Tranquill on the field during the regular season again. That's going to be fun.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so I was taking a deep breath because I wasn't sure if you wanted to kick this conversation off or you wanted me to. So we've had a ton of conversations today. We've talked all things rookies. We've talked injuries. We've talked biggest impressions so far. We've talked offensive line. We've talked about the safety depth. We've talked about receivers. We've talked about running backs. We've talked about kickers. We've had questions and answers. We've talked about micheladas. We've gone through it all. For folks who were on Chargers Twitter yesterday, you may have seen some videos and some comments and some back and forth about some wide receivers on this team. And I kind of sat back and just kind of watched for a bit. And I understand the desire of folks who are looking at this wide receiving core, and in short, they want more. I get it. Jake, if you were standing up in Broadway on the front of a wicked theater, and we're about to go belt out one of the loudest songs you've ever done, and it came out sounding like screeches. Do you think I'm going to be laughing? Am I going to be booing? Am I going to be throwing crap at you? Or am I going to be like, okay, Jake might not be able to sing, but like put him in a broadcast studio, like then I'll gauge how he's doing. You look at a fish, you don't expect the fish to climb the tree and then tell it, man, I wish you climbed the tree better. Like the fish is like, hey, damn it, I swim. What do you want me to do? Yesterday, there was quite the stir about a Mike Williams video or two where people were saying, he sucks at route running. Mike Williams isn't trying. Mike Williams doesn't have work ethic. Mike Williams doesn't care for this team. Mike Williams hasn't improved. Mike Williams, and they were just going off based on a few videos. And I get the desire for wanting Mike Williams to improve. I get it. But if you're going to sit here and compare Mike Williams to Keenan Allen in route running, he's never going to be that. He's never going to be that route runner. He never was, and he won't be. Could he improve route running? Sure. Do we know if he's actually done it yet? No idea. We've seen, 2 camps where he's gone in and out? Also, sidebar, as soon as all of that smoke started going, he goes and grabs this awesome touchdown grab. I'm just like, oh, chef's kiss. This is fantastic. Mike Williams is not going to be your shifty route runner. And quite frankly, the routes that Michael Thomas ran, and folks are talking about, oh, well, he needs to have better routes. He wants to Michael Thomas. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. Go back and watch Michael Thomas. Like, there's a lot of slants that he does. I mean, he was just getting ball after ball after ball after ball for 5 yards slants and just going in with it. Granted, he is a better route runner than Mike Williams, but we don't necessarily need that when we have route runners. Josh Palmer is a better route runner, in my opinion, and we said it from day one, than Mike Williams. Cool. Do we expect Mike Williams to improve? Yes. Do we hope that he improves? Absolutely. But I am not going to be the guy that is going to sit here and poo-poo on Mike Williams from being a bad route runner when he gets 8 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, 1,000 yards, 20 yards a clip, mossing everyone. Everyone loves him then. Are you going to poo-poo Keenan Allen because he can't go up and moss 50-50 balls? I'm not. So, I understand we want Mike Williams to be a better route runner. I understand that he could get better. Sure. But I am not judging Mike Williams on his ability to run routes. I am judging Mike Williams on his ability to catch footballs and touchdowns. I could care less how he does it. Just do it.
Okay. A lot to take in there. This is all I could say yesterday when listening to all the banter about Mike Williams. Again, where it came from, I understand where it came from. And it wasn't even from any bashing. It was just saying Mike Williams versus Josh Palmer. And yes, in a route running drill, Mike Williams did not look his best. Did not. Oh, what's up, Craig? Sorry, just went off on a little tangent. Had to say hi to Craig there. Here was my perspective on it. After listening to everything, after seeing everything, I had to quote Korg from Thor Ragnarok and just say, the only thing that makes sense is that nothing makes sense. Because Dan, here's what I'll say, and I said it to you yesterday. The perspective that you're using, or the perspective that others are using as far as they would have wanted or expected Mike Williams in his 5th year to be a better receiver rather than just a one-trick pony, all of you are right. All of the narratives as it relates to Mike Williams yesterday were correct. You could make a case for every single one of them. Dan, for you, I get it. Nobody's going to ask Austin Eckler to go man the inside linebacker position and go and expect to get 56 tackles and a couple of pass breakups. I get it. You're taking Mike Williams for who he is, what he's made his career as a wide receiver on, and that's fine. Now, to one of your points that you're saying is going up and mossing everybody and out jumping everybody. Well, the problem is that when Randy Moss would normally do that, he'd at least get up without having an injury. Mike Williams, it's kind of 50-50 on whether or not that happens. To the other side of the argument, for those that are saying that Mike Williams, you'd expect by year 5 would be a little bit better in these type of route running aspects, is that yes, I understand that. I would understand that because now you're taking the coach's philosophy that you've heard from them publicly as far as having that type of versatility. You would expect Mike Williams, who's a veteran of this wide receiver group, to just be a little bit better and not just hinge himself to that. Again, I can understand both sides of the coin because they both
there is no both sides.
There is though, dude. There is. As again, if you were to just take that video in a microcosm, yes, there is a case for both sides. But you're both right. Now, my opinion on all of this as it relates to the long term, Josh Palmer was drafted to eventually replace Mike Williams. And especially after you see what Tyron Johnson is doing in camp, I don't believe that he is brought back after this year on this roster. I think that this will ultimately end up being his final year on this team. So I hope from this stance of everything we're talking about that he goes out and he balls out. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he goes and has a great season. But I think from the wide receiving talent that all of a sudden you're seeing start to emerge on this roster, I think Mike Williams will be walking in free agency next year, especially if he has a great year. To me, I relate this a lot like what the Kenneth Murray selection was to Denzel Perryman. That was a shot across the bow to say, this is the grooming for the next replacement at that position. So do I think that Mike Williams is still wide receiver 2 on this roster? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No question. I mean, wide receiver 3 should, as it stands right now, looks like it's going to be Tyron Johnson. Right behind him is Josh Palmer. But hey, there are certain things that Mike Williams can do that's a hell of a lot better than certain wide receivers on this team. I get that argument. But to stand here and say that, that Mike Williams isn't giving much effort, let's not go too far with that. I don't believe that. But yes, from a route running standpoint, I would hope that 5 years into the league, it looks a hell of a lot better than what we saw yesterday. So that's what I mean. Again, I understand both things, Dan. I understand yours for taking it at face value and taking him as the wide receiver that he is, which he's damn good at, by the way. But for others who want to look at it from a standpoint of following the coach's philosophy and that aspect of versatility, that's totally fine too. Because when you see these guys come in the way that they're coming in, like the Palmers and the Johnsons, it looks good. And it's not, I'll just say this, it's not a bad problem to have when you have so many wide receivers that can do so many different things. Yeah. That's what I'll end it on.
I'll try to be succinct with this, Jake. And honestly, I appreciate the discussion because I was more just making an observation. All of a sudden, folks went ballistic, and all of a sudden it becomes this sided thing. I have never compared Keenan Allen to Mike Williams and looked at two of them and said, man, Keenan Allen's making Mike Williams look like trash. Paraphrasing from a route running perspective. Man, I wish that our wide receiver 2 isn't like wide receiver 6 from a route running perspective. Like that, to me, that's a no news thing. And you're also getting this off of like a play or two on a drill when you also have evidence from countless players and coaches talking about the work that Mike Williams has put in this offseason as showcased in camp about his route running, about him trying to be a better football player. So you're going to take the route or two in the drill that you saw, and you're going to deduce that he is not caring or that he doesn't look any better from route running perspective. Like, I understand why people want to see it, but just because you haven't seen it and just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not there. And so I understand folks wanting Mike Williams to be better out route running. We all do. And I'm not saying that he is or is not. I'm just saying that's not it. Like, that's not going to tell you if he's a better route runner. It just isn't. And oh, by the way, how many routes has this team asked him to run for the last 4 years?
Dan,
Bueller?
are you happy you got that out?
I'm good.
Happy you
I'm
got
good
that
now.
out.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready.
Take a deep breath.
I feel great. I was more just like, whoa, there's a lot of slander here from Michael Williams. Like, what did he do? He just cut his hair, and all of a sudden people are freaking out. Like, sheesh. But apparently, it's Davante Adams' time anyways. So you don't even have to worry about this. Next season, we got Davante Adams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer.
Oh yeah, because we got that money to throw around.
Oh yeah, no big deal. It's fine. Yep. So that is going to do it for all of the questions and answers and topics and things that we've had today. Shout out to all of the folks who have come in, chimed in with their questions, comments, and topics. There have been some hilarious topics that we've had here. Shout out to Jorge Rodriguez, Mr. Fox, Time to Bolt, Team Coco, everyone. Mike's just slow. Deal with it, apparently. I'm just going to let that one ride. That one ride.
Dan.
I can't do it.
Breath,
I can't do it.
Take a breath. All right? Take
a
man. Breath, sir.
No, this is all good. Honestly, I've had a blast doing this, and everything about this has been a blast. You guys are awesome. Jake, is there anything you want to tell the good people before we head here?
No, man. It's been a positive week of training camp. Again, biggest surprises. Doesn't look like there's anything as far as the serious injuries goes, which is probably the best thing out of all of this. You've had a good group of rookies already playing out in a first week of practice. What you're seeing from certain veterans coming on board, free agents acquisitions, and obviously Justin Herbert developing in year 2. This has been exciting. It's been extremely exciting. So I'm looking forward to getting out to training camp this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. Can't wait to just take in that view at Jack Hammett's Oracle. Yes, it's going to be so good. I can't wait. So football is back. Can't wait. Need to get out there and go to training camp. So looking forward to it.
Jake, DVCSD says, I like this guy. Do you think he's talking about you or talking about the other comments about Davante Adams?
It's definitely not me. I'll say that much.
I don't think it's me either.
Me. I don't think I gained that much people appeal. So
no, clearly I don't either. Looking at the comments yesterday, and Marcus would like us to talk about everything but the Chargers.
Everything but the Chargers. Okay, I'll remember that next time.
I feel like it's a lose-lose, Jake, because we talk about the Chargers. Everyone says don't talk about the Chargers. You don't talk about the Chargers. They say stick to the Chargers. It's okay. It's part of the gig. All right, guys, that's going to do it for Chargers Unleashed. You can find Jake Hefner at Jake T. Hefner on Twitter. Myself at Chargers Homer. You can find our podcast on Spotify, on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe if you have not already. Got a lot of things coming. We got some fun stuff in the making that I can't even wait till that gets out of the bag. You can find us on Twitter at LAC_Unleashed. Thank you so much for spending your lunchtime with us. We've had a blast. Is blast the word?
A blast.
I think that might be the word that someone has talked about that I say all the time. I just learned it. Anyways, for Jake Hefner, myself, Dan Wolkenstein, for LA Football Network, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you next time later in the week as our coverage of the training camp for Los Angeles Chargers continues here on LA Football Network. Talk to you soon. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and bolt up. Let's go!